This one's about the false flag attack that I believe is imminent on London. So what is a false flag? Well, very quickly, it's when a country attacks itself but blames another country for the attack that they did themselves. The goal of the false flag is to create an outrage amongst the domestic population that will be used to justify a war against the country that's been blamed, wrongly blamed, for the false flag. Why is there a need for a false flag? Well, they've had this Russia fake war thing for a while. Remember, Vladimir Putin was a former member of the World Economic Forum, Young Global Leaders for Tomorrow. Klaus Schwab has actually admitted that.
And mention now names like Mrs. Merkel, even Vladimir Putin and so on. They all have been young global leaders of the World Economic Forum. Mm-hmm.
Normies aren't really buying into this war. There's been sort of war fatigue. You know, when it first started, there was plenty of virtue signalling in places like Surrey with the flying the Ukraine flag, Slava Ukraine, and tried to blame the inflation on the war that was actually caused by the money printing to finance various kind of lockdown bribes. Resulting cost of lockdown crisis turned many off the war. There's not as many Zelensky fans as there were before because it's now hitting normies in their own pockets, you know, the cost of lockdown crisis. It's not going to wash with the normie anymore. The other thing that's happening is time is a great revealer. It was always inevitable that at some point they're going to have to fess up to what they did regarding the medical experiment. And what we're seeing now is exactly that, a controlled release of information. Lee from Veritas Vincent YouTube channel has been very, very good on that, explaining that this is a controlled release of information. If they try to release the information all in one go, it's going to cause them a massive amount of anger. So they've been doing a controlled release to try to minimize the angry backlash when people find out that they've been poisoned and coerced into taking that poison by their own government. But I think even with a controlled release of information, there's going to be an awful lot of very, very, very angry people. So they need a distraction. So I always remember my son was very, very good when he was a baby, toddler, that type of thing. But I remember talking to my dad about, what can you do when he gets upset or something? And my dad said, just distract him. If he's fixated by wanting his play around with his toy car and, you know, you're in a restaurant or something, what you need to do is distract him. And I think normies are very similar to toddlers in that respect, in that, forgive this, I think there's a queen bee flying around, but never mind. So yeah, normies are very similar to toddlers in that respect, in that you need to just distract them with something, put them into a fear state about something else, create some sort of event that will distract them away from the thing, you know, which is the medical experiment and the fact that they've been poisoned. So what better way of distracting them? It needs to be a bigger event, you see. So what better distraction than a war with Russia?
And you see him, there he is.
So wars are also, you know, the big club likes wars because they hate us, and they've used wars for a very long time to thin the herd. Of course, as well now, you know, they feel as if that there needs to be quite a dramatic thinning of the herd because of AI. They don't need us. They see us as useless eaters. You know, all the things that we said. Obviously, the medical experiment was quite a big one, and it's you know, in terms of pursuing Depop. Problem that they've got now, obviously, is that even normies are wising up to it. And so there won't be many takers for any future offerings of the sheep dip. There won't be many people that will turn up to the Britney Spears and the Boosters anymore. So if they want a killing to continue, well, what better way than the old favourite of theirs, which is war. Now, without some sort of staged false flag event, it's going to be quite difficult to get people to go along with a war in Russia. You know, Sunak announced conscription, so this fits in with them preparing for war. But people on social media, what I'm seeing is that like, no way am I going to allow my son or daughter to be conscripted. However, that might change via a Hegelian dialectic problem, reaction, solution type scenario, which a false flag would be a London fake flag event. So, some people, normies, might be watching this, the GP that I used to know, Daryl Mullen or whatever, he will say, and that would never happen. Oh, that's just a rat. Well, the thing is, Daryl, right, is that even the BBC has admitted that false flag events have happened in the past and they've been used to start wars. There's even an article about it on the BBC's website. And they give examples of false flags that have happened in the past. For example, the German invasion of Poland in 1939 was preceded by a false flag event that the Nazis did. So the Nazis attacked themselves and then blamed it on the Poles and then used that as justification for attacking Poland. Other examples would be the Winter War of 1939 between the Soviet Union and Finland. So in this case, the USSR attacked itself, blamed it on the Finns, and then used that as justification for attacking Finland. And the other one that they've mentioned on there that I'm actually very, very surprised about is the Gulf of Tonkin incident that happened in 1967 that led to the American involvement in the Vietnam War. So I'm quite surprised that they must feel that there's been enough time elapsed for them to fess up on that one. It'd be quite interesting to see how long it takes for them to admit that the Big Nine event that happened in 2001 was a fake flag, a false flag. And of course, in that case, it was used to justify invading, bombing Afghanistan, doing regime change in Iraq. As we know, all about getting natural resources for the big corporations that put puppets like Bush into power in America, and Blair for that matter. And obviously the arms companies did very well out of that war, and they also like it too because they're Satanists, they hate us, and they want to try and kill as many human beings as possible. So predictions about this fake flag, because the news about the medical experiment is becoming more and more explicit. I did a newspaper review from the Daily Mail not so long ago. I think that they'll need to try to go for this war, a full-blown war with Russia quite soon, unfortunately. So they'll need to do the false flag attack themselves. So what I'm saying here is that the British government will orchestrate maybe what's called a dirty suitcase bomb. So it'll be a suitcase containing high explosives and then some sort of radioactive material. So they'll blow this suitcase-sized nuke somewhere in London, don't know where. It will release radiation. Obviously, the newspapers will blame it on Putin, when really it was the British government that was bombing its own citizens. There'll be then, what they'll hope is that this attack, the problem that they created, will create a very, very angry reaction, an anti-Russian reaction from the British people. And then they can come up with the solution, which is, let's bomb Putin, let's go and invade Russia, it's almost a bit like, I don't know if you've seen the film Starship Troopers or read the book. In the book, they conscripted people to go and fight against these insects on a foreign planet. It's just like, the film version actually was better than the book, one of these very, very, very rare occasions, because it had the soldiers, they were all, it was in the future, obviously, set in the future, fictitious future, but the clothing, it all kind of mimicked Nazi Germany and stuff, so there was like heavy overlays of fascism. But the war starts off with a false flag event, which is these alien insects bombing Buenos Aires in Argentina, and the film shows how one of the characters' parents died in the bug attack, and so what does he want to do? He wants to avenge them, and he wants to join up in the Space Force and go to this foreign planet and fight the bugs. And this is what they want to try to achieve, almost certainly, with a false flag attack, a dirty nuclear suitcase bomb in London. Because at the moment there wouldn't be enough public desire for a war against Russia to send British conscripts out to the Ukraine to fight Russian conscripts. There wouldn't be enough desire on the part of people to do it. People have become a little bit jaded. I think even the normie, they're not going for their rooster boosters, which tells me, although they might not be admitting to us that they were conned, deep down, the fact that they're not going for the rooster booster and all the other magic potions for all sorts of stuff tells me that they've lost their trust in government. There's more people waking up. I think in Finland they had a poll recently, and 70% of Finns now believe that politicians are untrustworthy, and they're in it for nefarious motives. So that's quite interesting, and I would imagine trust in politicians is even lower in Britain at the moment, bearing in mind what's actually happened. Obviously in the UK, you've had a whole series of prime ministers who've just been installed. So why would anybody trust this kind of process that's labelled as being democratic? Yeah, so I wouldn't be surprised whatsoever if there is some sort of false flag attack done in London with a dirty suitcase bomb containing nuclear material. The great advantage of the nuclear material is that you don't need to cause much physical damage. You don't need a massive explosion, but you can just maybe put a 10 mile or 5 mile exclusion zone and say to people, oh, you can't go into there because it's like dangerous radiation. And of course, people can't go into that area and measure the radiation themselves because there's an exclusion zone. So it's like perfect. It's similar to a virus. I've not said that exactly right, but those tiny little things that begin with V. You can't. Whether they exist or not is a matter of debate. But this radiation is similar to that, isn't it? In that they're allegedly dangerous, but you can't see it. So you just have to trust the government, and they always have your best interests at heart, that these things that you can't see, they're there and they're deadly. So you better go along with what the government says unless you want to die. So this is what's going on. I think they're going to try and go for a dirty suitcase bomb, false flag attack for London. What's going to be quite interesting from my point of view is, will people fall for it? I don't think it will be as successful as they think. I think people will call it out. I think what we need to do is take preemptive action and start saying to them on Twitter, Facebook, you're going to do this. You're going to set off a dirty suitcase bomb. You're going to do a false flag attack. The British government is going to attack Great Britain itself. It's going to attack the British people, and it's going to blame it on Russia, and you want to take us to war. And you know what? We ain't going. So when Sunak talks about conscription, well, that's also a high risk tactic from the big club, because what if people say no? Similar to what happened when in Germany and Austria they tried to mandate the medical experiment. And they said, well, you're going to get fined. If you don't have the medical experiment, you're going to get fined. And if you don't pay the fine, you're going to go to prison. And what did people do? They called their bluff. 30% of Germans and 30% of Austrians, thereabouts, didn't back down. They called their bluff. And I think that something similar is going to happen here. they'll go for a false flag, but will it work? I don't think so. Because even if 30%, 40% of people conscripted say no and they refuse to go off and fight and die in Ukraine, then that's it. You've called their bluff. So as people, I can't remember who said this before, but you know, the big club, it's on its last legs, but animals who are in the process of dying, they can lash out. There's nothing more dangerous than an opponent who's desperate because they know that their time's coming towards the end. So yeah, it'd be quite interesting to see what happens. You know, as I've said to you before, I don't know, is central London a nice place to hang out? I don't think so. It's not been like a decent place to hang out for a long time now. So yeah, that's all I'll say. So God bless.